How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samech, Daf 60 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, friends, today's Daf is Givaldig. Particularly the end of today's Daf is pretty famous and very cool. I mean, I'm recording this just a few days after Tisha B'Av. Some very interesting kind of Tisha B'Av related stuff. Anyways, okay, we'll get there. But 1 second, where are we at over here? What time? Okay. What time is it? Until 7:39. And what time is it? Okay. 7:39. Okay. Givaldi. Okay, should have enough time. Okie dokie. We're going to start on Daf Samech. Right? Okay. Yeah, why not? We're going to start on Daf Samech at the first of two Mishnayos and the first wide line of the Daf. It says in Mishnah, Lo yiftach adam l'chotzer ashutvin Pesach kneged Pesach v'cholin kneged cholin. So, if you have, let's say, two people in a chotzer, okay, Reuven and Shimon, okay, so if the houses are right opposite each other in the chotzer, the doors to their house should not be opposite one another. So that I guess if both of the doors are open, if they are right opposite one another, so if both doors are open, you can see into the other fellow's house. So don't do that. Don't have the doors opposite one another. Okay, again. Lo yiftach adam l'chotzer ashutvin Pesach kneged Pesach. You shouldn't have in the courtyard of partners one door opposite another door. V'cholin kneged cholin. The same applies to windows. You shouldn't have one window opposite another window. You should stagger them so that people aren't looking into each other's houses. Lo yaisenu gadol. If you have a small window, don't make it a big window. Echad lo yasenu shnaim. If you have like one window, don't make it into two separate windows, like in two different areas. Where am I? But in Rishus HaRabim, you can open up Pesach neged Pesach. So let's say there's like two houses on either side of a highway, and so in that case you can right there the two doors can be opposite each other if there's like a Rishus HaRabim in between. V'cholin kneged cholin, and a window opposite a window, because I mean forget about the two houses. I mean, even if it was just one house, you're anyways going to have a million people. You're not going to have much privacy if your house opens up into the Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, anyways, you're going to have to, if you care about people looking at you already, you're going to have to figure out what to do, because of the Rishus HaRabim, not because of this house that's opposite you. Also gadol. And therefore, in this case, where there's a Rishus HaRabim between the two houses, so if you have a small window, you can make it a big window. Actually, no, this is Taka talking about, I think it's Taka talking about doors, actually, not windows. Anyways, we're going to get to this in the Gemara. Anyways, definitely according to some people, it's referring to the door. And if there was one, you can make it two, when we're talking about two houses opposite each other, it is just a rab. Excuse me, Mom. Okay. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, from where do we get this notion, this idea that doors should be staggered, and that windows should be staggered, that they shouldn't be opposite one another, so to prevent each other from looking into each other's houses? How do we know this? Rabbi Yochanan says, because the pasuk says by Bilam. The pasuk says by Bilam HaRoshe, that he went to curse the Yidden, and it says Vayisa Bilam Eseinov, and Bilam looks up, Vayaris he saw Shochin the Shvatov, and he saw that the Yidden were dwelling amongst their tribes. Mara, what exactly did he see? What did Bilam HaRoshe see when he looked at the Yidden camping there? He noticed something very interesting, that among all of the Yidden encamped over there, the tents were organized in such a way that the opening to each tent would not be opposite the opening to another tent. They were staggered, and so that everybody could have their privacy. Omar and Bilam Arosha then said, that these people, these Yidden, are it is befitting that the holy that the divine presence should should rest upon them, settle on them, should be upon them. And then he said, "Matoivu alecha Yaakov mishkanesecha Yisrael." So for that reason, we don't have doors opposite each other. If you have a small one, is it talking about doors or window? So the thing is that you're going to see we're about to see Machlokes Rabbi Bar Chama and Rava. According to Rabbi Bar Chama, it's definitely talking about doors. According to Rava, I imagine we'll be talking about doors or windows. But for now, it says, if it's small, don't make it big. So Rabbi Bar Chama figured to say, so now we learned in the first parak of Masechta BavaBasra that, in front of the door, you get 4 amis in front of the door. Okay, that if you have let's say 2 houses in a chutzner, so each house opposite the front door, they get 4 amis that's theirs for, I think, like their animals, like unload and stuff. And I think the idea is even if like the door was only 2 amis wide, you still get an area of 4 by 4 in front of the door. Okay, so says the Gemara. So Rabbi Bar Chama l'meimer. So Rabbi Bar Chama thought to say that when it says that if it's small, don't make it big. By dadad lo lishavya by tmanya. So Rabbi Bar Chama figured that if you have a doorway that is 4, I don't know if I just said tfachim, but 4 amis, I believe. If you have a doorway that is 4 amis wide, lo lishavya bar tmanya. Don't make it 8 amis wide, because then you'll have 8 amis, meaning because you have, in front of the doorway, you have 4 amis. So if the doorway is 4 amis wide, and then you have in front of that 4 amis belonging to you, if you then make that larger, so now the doorway is 8 amis wide, well now you have, not in air. Okay, originally when it was 4 amis wide, so you had an area in front of the door 4 by 4 times 4, which is, I guess, 16 amis squared. Now, if you make the doorway 8 amis wide, so now you have 8 wide and 4 out, so 32. 8 times 4 is 32 amis squared. So you're basically doubling the square amis. So therefore, Rabbi Bar Chama figured, so if the doorway was 4 amis, don't make it 8 amis, because then you're going to increase the amount of space that is shaykh to you in the chutzner. So again, Rabbi Bar Chama Rabbi Bar Chama figured to say, by dad lo lishavi by tmanya, if the doorway is 4 amis wide, don't make it 8 amis wide, because it's going to be dekashakal tmanya b'chutzner, because then you're going to take, then he's going to be entitled to 8 amis worth of, you're going to have a doorway 8 amis wide, which therefore entitles him to 4 amis in the courtyard opposite the entire length of the 8 amis of the door. This is just like a predecessor. This is just like a warm up for the next parak that we're going to start tomorrow. Oh yeah, Chevra, by the way, today we're finishing. Whoa, Chevra, I totally spaced out. Today we're finishing Cheskas Sabatim. Chevra, today we're finishing Parak Cheskas Sabatim. It's been like 30 plus daf. It's been big, Chevra. Cheskas Sabatim is big stuff. Tomorrow we're starting on Moicheres Aboyis. That's going to be some real oh my gosh, you're going to need some diagrams for that. Akoponim. So Rabbi Bar Chama says, again, I'll read that for like the 20th time. So Rabbi Bar Chama the Meimar by Dadlo the Shav by Tmanya. If the doorway is 4 amas wide, don't make it 8 amas wide. Dikashakol Tmani b'chatzor, because then he's going to be entitled to more area in the chatzor. So don't do that. It's not allowed. Aval But Rabbi Bar Chama figured, bar tarte li shavya bar arbae shapri dami. But if you have a doorway that is 2 amas wide, well then anyways, in front of the doorway you would anyways be entitled to an area of 4 amas by 4 amas. So to have a doorway that's 2 amas wide and make it 4 amas wide, that should be okay, because in terms of the area that you're entitled to in the chotzer, it was and remains 4 amas by 4 amas. Even when the doorway was 2 amas wide, still the area that he's entitled to in front of the doorway is 4 by 4. So it says Rabbi Bar Chama, if you have a doorway that's 2 amas wide, extend it to 4 amas. Why not? The area that you're entitled to in the chotzer remains the same. Omar le Rava, to which Rava responds, Matzi Omar le, no, the other partner can say to him. So let's say Reuven wants to extend his door from 2 amas to 4 amas. Rava argues that Shimon could say, wait. Matzi Omar le, Shimon could say, B'pischa zutra matzina litztanu yeminach. 1 second. Initially your door was 2 amas wide. That worked out for me because I was able to keep my privacy when the door was 2 amas wide. But now a 4 amma wide door, I mean that's a wide door. It's around 6 feet wide of a door. I think that's a wide door. So Reuben and Shimon. So Shimon says, look, the 2 amma wide door works for me. The 4 amma wide door doesn't work for me. So Rami Bar Chama was viewing it entirely through the lens of how much space is he going to be claiming in the chotzer now based on the width of the door. Rava was viewing it from the lens of tznius. So therefore Rami Bar Chama, from the lens of the sort of technicality of the chotzer, he says, look, I understand why a doorway 4 amas wide, don't make it 8 amas wide, because then he's going to be taking up more of the chotzer. But, says Rami Bar Chama, a doorway 2 amas wide, to make it 4 amas wide is fine, because at the end of the day, you had 4 by 4 amas entitlement in the chotzer the whole time. Whereas Rava says, wait, but there's a tznius issue over here, which is that Shimon can make the argument that initially, when it was 2 amas wide, okay, I worked it out, I figured out how to still maintain my privacy, but now you're doubling the width of the door, and now you could see into the chotzer more, and have more visibility of what I'm up to. That doesn't work for me, says Rava. Meaning Rava says that Shimon can make that argument. And similarly, if you had 1 door, don't make it into 2 doors. So Rami Bar Chama figured to say, look, Bar Arbae lo lishavya trei b'nei tarte tarte. So Rami Bar Chama figured, look, if you have a door that is 4 amas wide, you're not allowed to say, you know what, I'm gonna make it only 2 amas wide, and I'm gonna open up another door, in a different area of my house, also 2 amas wide, right? You can't do that. Even though, sure, before you had 4 amas worth of door, and now you still have 4 amas worth of door. The thing is, when the doorway was 4 amas wide, you were entitled to an area outside, in front of the doorway in the chotzer, 4 amas by 4 amas. Now when you divide it in half, and now you have 2 doors that are 2 amas wide, well a 2 amma wide door is still entitled to 4 amas by 4 amas in front of it in the chotzer. So now essentially when you're making it and you're splitting it into 2 doors, now you have 4 amas by 4 amas times 2. So therefore he's getting twice as much area of the chotzer, so that is not allowed. Okay? So again, Rami Bar Chama is going to be viewing it from the prism of how much space is he claiming in the chotzer, versus we're going to see Rava is viewing it from al tznius. But anyways, again, so Rami Bar Chama figured, Bar Arbae lo lishavya trei b'nei tarte tarte. If you have 1 door that's 4 amas wide, don't divide it in 2 to make it, 2 amma wide doors, because then you're going to be getting 2 areas of 4 by 4 in front of each door, which is twice as much as you had originally. Because Mamela you're going to be taking up, an area of Dalad Amas times 2, so 8 Amas. Bar Tamne lishavya b'nei arbae shapridami. But Rami Bar Chama would argue that if you had a door that was 8 amas wide, which meant that you were entitled to an area of 4 amas in front of the 8 amma wide door, which is a square, which is 32 ammas wide. Well, if you divide that in half and say, you know what, I'm going to make this a 4 amma wide door, and I'll make another one 4 amma wide door, which means that in front of each one you're entitled to 16 square ammas, which is a total of 16 square ammas times 2 is 32 square ammas. So you didn't change anything there, so that should be okay according to Rambam Bar Chama. Whereas Amalei Rave responds like he did earlier, and he says, look, but there's a tznius issue over here, which is Matzi Amar Le. Shimon could respond to Reuven and say, B'chad Pischa Matzina Etz Tanui Minach B'trei Lo Matzina Etz Tanui Minach. Look, when you had that one door that was 8 ammas wide, okay, so I figured, okay, great, here's the door, this area is where his doorway is. I'll make sure, if I want to just kind of have like privacy, I won't do it there. But now, Shimon argues, now there's 2 areas that I have to be careful, right? Because now, before you had an 8 amma door, now you have one 4 amma door here, another 4 amma door in another area of the house, and now all of a sudden there's 2 parts of the chutzner that I have to be careful. Oh, what's going on here? What am I doing here? And do I have privacy here? So therefore, Rava says it's not a matter of like how much area is Reuven claiming in the chutzner. It's a matter of privacy, and therefore Shimon can argue and say, look, I understand that nothing changed in terms of how much of the chutzner you're claiming, but in terms of my ability to maintain privacy, it's more difficult this way, and I'm not into it, argues Shimon. In Rishus Harabim, though, let's say you have 2 houses on opposite sides of a highway, and there's a Rishus Harabim over there. Well, then you can open up one door opposite the other door, because the Amarle Sof Abayis, it's the new Rishus Harabim. Because if Reuven wants to open up a door opposite Shimon's and there's a Rishus Harabim over there, Reuven says to Shimon, look, anyways, you have a Rishus Harabim over here. People, driving by all the time. Anyways, you're going to have to, keep in mind that people could see you. So therefore, I'm not really changing anything. That was Mishnah/Gemara number 1. Woo! I'll tell you, I thought it would move faster. It's funny. Yesterday it was the same Zach, although yesterday was a bigger daf. I don't think this is going to be as long as yesterday, but I'm a little bit, I thought it would move a little quicker. I think the next part's going to move a little quicker, but who knows? Maybe I'll be surprised. Zok the Mishnah, in Osin Cholol Tachas Rishus Harabim, we don't make spaces under Rishus Harabim, Boris Shichun Umayris, pits, ditches, and vaults. We don't like dig areas underneath Rishus Harabim. I guess tunnels and things. Rabbi Eliezer says you can do it. So long as the earth above whatever you're digging under there, a ditch, a vault, or a pit, or a vault, a pit, a ditch, or a vault, as long as the area above it where people are going to be walking is strong enough that a wagon laden with stones would be able to traverse over it and it would remain sturdy, well then that would be acceptable. Okay, fine. The Gemara is, I believe, the Gemara is going to explain the machlokes. In Motziin Zizin v'Gzuz Turos l'Rishus Harabim, we do not have like planks and balconies or something. I think, was that a balcony? Maybe. Why not? Planks and balconies, I guess. Jutting out into Rishus Harabim, Ela im Ratza Konis Esoch Shelo Motzi. But if you want to have a plank sticking out of your house, so you can't have it over Rishus Harabim, but you can kind of put the wall, like move it, I don't know if you want to make it like 1 amma sticking out, so just, how about this? Move the house back by 1 amma, and then, you can stick out whatever you want to stick out from the house, and it'll still remain on your property. It won't be over Rishus Harabim. That's fine. Okay, if you want to move back your house so that you can have things sticking out of it, that's fine. Where am I? Now, if he, however, buys a courtyard and the courtyard already has these planks and balconies overhanging Rishus Harabim, well then Arezo b'Chazkasa, then you can assume that it was done in a kosher way, that he worked it out somehow, and whatever. It's not on the buyer, right? Toanin lolokeach. It's not on the buyer to prove that that the previous owner had done everything properly. if he buys it with it, he can keep it, he can keep it that way. So now Zog the Gemara Vera Abonon, right? So the Mishnah had said that you can't, I guess like tunnel, let's say, I assume it applies. They mentioned pits, ditches, and vaults. What's a pit? What's a ditch? What's a vault? A tunnel, I know what it is. Could we just say tunnel? Hope so. So, whatever, you dig some kind of space under, did we say Rishus Harabim? Probably, right? Ein Ozachol Taras Rishus Harabim, yeah. So the Tanakama says you can't do it. Now, B'lezer says you could do it as long as the earth above the space is strong enough that a wagon with stones can walk over it, and it'll hold it, it'll support it. But the rabbis say no. Zimnin demafchis v'lo adaite. The Rabbanan say it's too risky. It's not an acceptable risk because the ground over time could get weaker, and nobody's going to notice, and somebody's going to get hurt. They're going to fall, right? The ground's going to break into the pit, ditch, or vault, and someone's going to get hurt. It's not going to be funny. Ein motziin zizim v'gzuz tiros v'chulei. We don't stick out. What are zizim and gzuz tiros? Come on, gotta look this up. Come on, 1, 2, 3. Come on. Okay, zizim and gzuz tiros. Ledges or balconies? Did I say balcony? Why not? Okay, fine. So, ledges and balconies. Okay, so we don't have ledges and balconies jutting out over Rishus Harabim. All right. Reb Ami Avalei Ziza Davanofik Lemavoya. So Reb Ami had a ledge that ledged out over a mavui. Mavui, of course, is like a shared area, shared between a few chutzers. Ve'ahu Gavra. If you don't remember what a mavui is, just no big deal. Just go learn Masechta Eruvin again. It's easy stuff. We learn Bava Metzia. Bava Metzia is hard stuff. Weiter. There was another fellow that he had a, what did we call it? A ledge? I think we called it a ledge, right? I think allegedly we called it a ledge. Yeah. So there was another fellow who had a ledge, allegedly, that was ledging out over Rishus Harabim. So also the Kami Derbam. So the case came before Rabbi Omer lay, and he says to the ledger, Zil coats, go and unledge your ledge. Go and remove your ledge. Omer lay. So the ledger guy, he says to Rabbi Ami, Veho mar nami isle, but don't you oichit have a ledge? So Didi lemavoya mapik. So Reb Ami says, well, yes, I do have a ledge, but my ledges over a mavui. A mavui is owned by the people in the chatzeris that open up into the mavui. Bnei mavoa machalin kabaya, and they're cool with it. But didach l'rishus harabim mapik. But your ledge is ledging into rishus harabim man machal gabach. Who exactly are you going to speak to in the rishus harabim that's going to say, yeah, it's okay? It's the public property. So therefore you can't ledge over public property, but I'm ledging over private property, over a mavui. The people in the mavui, they're cool with it. Rabbi Yanai had a tree that its branches overhanged Rishus Harabim. There was another fellow, he had a tree that its branches overhanged Rishus Harabim. Also, Bnei Rishus Harabim Avu Kamak Ve'Ilovin, and the people of Rishus Harabim did not like that this other guy had this tree whose branches were going over Rishus Harabim. They never said anything to Rabbi Yanai, but this other guy they were giving a hard time. Also, the case came before Rabbi Yanai Amarle, and he says to this guy with the tree with the branches overhanging Rishus Harabim, Zilo idno v'salamacher. All right, go home now. Come back tomorrow. Balilia that night, shadar katze lau didei. So that night, Rabbi Yanai went and he cut down his tree so that the branches would no longer be overhanging Rishus Harabim. So the case came before him again the following day, right? He said, come back the next day. They came back the next day. And he says to the guy with the tree, Zil coats, go and cut down your tree, or at least cut down the branches, I imagine. So the fellow says, Omar Nami Islay, but don't you also have a tree whose branches are overhanging Rishus Harabim? Omar le zil chazi. So Yanai says, look, why don't you go and look for yourself? I kodes didi, kodes didoch. If my tree has been cut down, go cut down your tree. I lo kodes didi, lo takuts at. If mine is not cut down, if mine is still there with its branches overhanging Rishus Harabim, so you can keep it there as well. But of course, Rabbi Yanai had cut his down overnight, so therefore the other fellow had to do the same to his. Now, what exactly happened here with Rabbi Ami, with Rabbi Yanai? Like, one way you can understand the story, you could translate the story, is like Rabbi Yanai is like pulling some weird shtick, like he was like trying to like pull a quick one, right? Meaning Rabbi Yanai was doing something wrong. He had a tree overhanging Rishus Harabim. He wasn't allowed to. Somebody else also did. The case came before him. He said, you can't do that. The guy says, well, you did it too. So he says, come back the next day. And then quickly, while nobody's looking, he went and cut down his tree. Kind of, he's like a little shady, right? But that's not the reason. It's not the reason. The reason is that the people never said anything to Rabbi Yanai because he was the great Rabbi Yanai, but from his perspective, he didn't realize that he was doing anything wrong. He thought he was doing a service to the Rishus Harabim. He had this tree that was overhanging Rishus Harabim, was providing shade to Rishus Harabim. He thought that Taka was a good thing that the tree was there. The thing is that the people in Rishus Harabim actually didn't like that, but they never said anything to him because he's Rabbi Yanai. When he saw that they gave a hard time to somebody else who was doing the same thing, he realized like, oh wait, the people actually don't like this. So therefore, when he realized that, he quickly went and cut his down and set an example so that when the next guy, when he said the next day, he said to the other guy, I want you to cut yours down. He had already done so himself, and he set the example, and he realized that they shouldn't be doing that. So again, so meikar myself, myself. What exactly happened to Rabbi Yanai? How come initially he had a tree that was overhanging Rishus Harabim, and then he cut it? Like what exactly happened? So meikar savar, initially Rabbi Yanai thought nichalu libnei Rishus Harabim diasvei betule. He initially thought that he was doing a service to the people in Rishus Harabim, that they could sit under the shade of the tree. But when they saw that actually they didn't approve and that they were giving this other guy a hard time, so Shadakatse, he went and cut down his tree immediately. Why did Rabbi Yanai have to go and first cut down his tree and then say come back the next day, and then he told the other guy to cut down his tree only after he had first cut down his own tree? Why can't he say, I'm reading that again, why couldn't Rabbi Yanai say to the other fellow, Zil kodes didach, look, you go and cut down your tree, Vadar akos didi, and I'll also do the same afterwards. Mishum de Rish Lakish, because of Rish Lakish, that we're going to learn Taka Masechtas Hanejin Oichit, Domer, that he says, Iskosha shubakotsu, like remove straw from your forehead, or something. What does Rashbam say? Iskosha haser kash mi ben enecha tchila. Okay, first remove the straw from your forehead. So meaning kshot atzmicha b'achar kach kshot achem. Adorn yourself first, and then afterwards adorn other people. Kushta is also, is there a difference between kushta and kshot? And kshot is to adorn, kushta is the truth. The point is, like said, first set yourself straight before setting other people straight, right? Rabbi Yanai shouldn't tell him, the other guy, first to cut down his tree while he still has a tree doing the same thing over in Rishus Harabim. Rather, Rabbi Yanai figured if he was going to advise to somebody else and asking for somebody else to cut down the tree, he should do the same thing himself first. So therefore he went and he did what was right, and he cut down the tree, and only afterwards did he advise somebody else to do the same. Okay, we said, but if the fellow would like, right, so we said that you can't have ledges and balconies overhanging Rishus Harabim, right? But if you want to have these balconies, so you could just move your house into your property more, move it in more, so that then you can have the balconies, and they'll be over your property, they won't be over Rishus Harabim. Okay. Where am I? What if he did that? So he built his house, more right, deeper into his property, so that he has the option to add balconies, but he never actually added the ledges or balconies. So if he moved inwards the house, but never actually built the balconies, can he later on build the balconies? So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kanas Motzi. So Rabbi Yochanan says, yeah, sure, as long as he I feel like I'm not using the right words, description, I don't know, whatever I would say. As long as he moved his house inwards in his property, it just sounds so weird. It just sounds like such a terrible way to say it. But hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Whatever, if he backed up the house into his property, so then Motzi could always build a balcony, whatever he wants. Rish Lakish Amar Kanas Eino Motzi. That Rish Lakish says that no, that if the house was further into the property, but he never built the ledges and stuff, so then he can't build it later. Amar Rabbi Yaakov, the Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, right? Because meaning once Rosh Hashanah got used to using that area, so then they kind of claim it. Amar, 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yaakov, the Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa. So Rabbi Yaakov says to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, Azbralach, I'll explain to you. Lahotzi kuliyam lo pligi demotzi. No. That if he built his house like inwards on his property so that he could build a balcony, of course he could build a balcony at any point. Kipliga, where they argue is lahachzer ksolim lemkomen. What if you want to put the walls back? So I guess maybe like you built the proper house like inwards in the property so you could build like these balconies. But then at a later point you actually want the area back, so you want to like build a wall, in that area, in the recessed area. So the Ipcha, and it's the opposite opinions. Itmar, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Eino Machzer. Rabbi Yochanan says you can't do that. You can't put the wall back because once the Rishus HaRabim got accustomed to using that area for themselves, because the house was like in more, so it's theirs now, and he can't put the wall there. Rish Lakish Amar Machzer. Rish Lakish says that he can put the wall, back, as far as his property goes. Right? He could reclaim the recessed area. Oh gosh, I hope I'm explaining that decently. Rabbi Yochanan says he can't put it back. Mishum de Rav Yehuda, because of Rav Yehuda, Dam Rav Yehuda, Meitzer Shechziku Barabim, right? If you have this area between two fields and the public uses it like to pass between the fields, well then also the kaklo, you can't ruin it, meaning once the public claims it, it's theirs. And therefore here also, once he kind of recessed his house and the public started using that area that's technically his property, they kind of claim it. And he can't say, get off, I'm putting a wall here. Rish Lakish says, Machzer, he can reclaim it and put a wall there. Look, when you're talking about between two fields, there isn't any space. So for the public to pass there, they kind of need this area between the two fields to walk there. And if they kind of use it, and they've been using it, well then you can't take that away from them, because then there's nowhere else for them to go. But over here there's a whole Rishus HaRabim for them to take advantage of. So then, that being the case, Rish Lakish argues that you would be able to move the wall back to the edges of your property. Fine. Lokach chotzer uva zizin v'gezuz tiros. So, if a fellow bought a chotzer that already had ledges and balconies jutting out over Rishus HaRabim, you can assume that it had already been worked out in a way that it was kosher, and you can keep the ledges and balconies in the chotzer that you purchased. Rav Huna says, Rav Huna, nafla chozer uvone osa. So Rav Huna says, and if the wall falls down, you could reconstruct it with the balconies and everything. But Meisei, we have a contradiction. Here's where we start getting into some Churban Abayis things. Ein mesaydin ve'ein machayrin ve'ein mefaychin bizman hazeh. That after the destruction of the second temple, we don't use like a white plaster, ve'ein mechayrin, I think it's like another kind of plaster, ve'ein mefaychin, and we don't like paint with colorful paints and things on our house. We don't paint our houses. Bizman hazeh. But if you purchased a chotzer that was already had this lime or paint, so you can keep it that way. But nafla eino chozer uvone osa. But if it falls down, you can't re-plaster it or repaint it. So Rav Huna says that if you buy a chotzer that already has ledges and balconies sticking out, so you can keep it that way, and if it falls down, you can even rebuild them. But we have a brisa that says that if you have these things that aren't allowed, like plastered walls and things, if they fall down, you cannot rebuild them that way. So Isur is shiny. Well, that's because you can't do it because that's something that's also. Whereas over here, we're talking about using the area of Rosh Hashanah. So that's a different story, and that would be Rav Huna would argue that if you bought the chotzer with these ledges and balconies sticking out and it fell down, you can reconstruct that. But by the isser of plastering a house or painting a house, that would not be allowed because that's an isser. Now, if it falls down, you wouldn't be able to put it back. Now, we're going to see soon, though, of the minhag of leaving, however, an area 1 amma by 1 amma that is not painted. So you can paint the rest of the house as long as you leave an area that is not painted. Okay. We didn't get there yet. A person should not plaster his house with white plaster. I guess because it looks nice. Like we want, I guess, the houses to look not so beautiful. And if you mix sand into the plaster, so now it's not so white, or tevin, or straw, mutter, that's allowed. Rebuta Omer says, Rebuta, erev bochol, harizet trachsid. If you mix sand into the plaster, well then it becomes very strong plaster, so that's not allowed. Also, it's not allowed, tevin, mutter. But if you put in straw, so then that would be okay, because I guess it makes the plaster not as nice. Now this is a very, very famous Mishnah. The Gemara. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. When the second temple was destroyed, Ravu Prushim B'Yisrael. So I think what it's saying is that there were people after the second they were distraught after the destruction of the second temple. And they just wanted to disengage from everything. They said, we're no longer going to eat meat. We're no longer going to drink wine. But then comes along Rabbi Yoshua to knock some sense into them. Rabbi Yoshua says to them, Bonai, my sons, how come you no longer want to eat meat or drink wine? They said to him, well, how can we? How can we eat meat? Meat is what they would offer in the temple on the altar. And now it's impossible. How could we eat meat? Nishta yayin. How could we drink wine possibly? They would use the wine for the libations on the altar. How could we drink wine anymore? Now there's no longer wine on the altar. How could we drink wine? Rabbi Shua then says to them in response, well then, how about this? We shouldn't even eat bread anymore. Because we can no longer bring korban menachos, so we shouldn't even eat bread. So they said, taka, efshir beferis, we'll eat fruits. Peris lo nochal. So Rabbi Shua responds, says, no, we can't eat fruits. Shekvar badu bikurim. The fruits were the bikurim. We can't bring bikurim anymore. We shouldn't eat any fruits. Efshir beferis acherim. So I said, well, we can eat fruits that aren't the Shivas Haminim. We'll eat, apples. So Rabbi Shua says, Ma'im lo nishte. Okay, but then let's not, how about this? We shouldn't drink water anymore. Shekvar bato nisach hamayim. Because there was the water libations on Sukkot. How can we possibly drink water when we can no longer do nisach hamayim? shosku. So at that point, they were knocked to their senses, and they said, okay, obviously we can't cut out every single thing that they did in the temple. Amr Loin, so Rabbi Yeshua continues, and he says to them, Bonai, my sons, Bo v'omar lachem, come and I will say to you, Shelo li'sabel kol ikar I efshar. Look, obviously, we can't ignore the fact that the temple was destroyed and refrain from mourning altogether. Shekvar nigzor gezerah. Because after all, the temple was, in fact, destroyed. What does Rashi say? He says, Shekvar nigzor gezerah churban v'nischayvu li'sabel. B'chiyuv says the Rashbam to mourn. Dichsiv she'sisu ito mosos kol mis'abim aleh, as we're going to see soon. Right, simchas Yerushalayim v'gilu ba kol ohaveh sisu ito mosos kol mis'abim aleh. So that ultimately they will rejoice, but kol mis'abim aleh, all those who mourn the destruction of the temple. So of course we have to mourn the destruction of the temple. But we can't mourn too much. We can't, cut out every single thing that reminds us of the Beis Hamikdash. That's too much. Because we don't enact gezeras, enactments on the congregation, unless most of the congregation would be able to do it. But most of the congregation would be unable to refrain from absolutely everything that reminds them of the Beis Hamikdash. Dichsiv, as the Apostle says, "V'me'era atem ne'erim, ve'osi atem kovim agoy kulo." That this was by Malachi, when I think that what they said that they were going to bring meiser and stuff, but they didn't, and then they got cursed. But it was because of goy kulo, because the entire nation said that they were going to do it. And obviously, and rubo kikulo, right? The majority would be the most. So meaning you would only have a gezerah that most of the people would agree to. Rather, says Rabbi Yeshua, the Chachamim said, this is what you can do. This is what you can do. A person builds a house and he plasters it with plaster, but leave a little bit unplastered. V'chama, how much? Rav Yosef Amal Amma, Rav Chizda Keneged Pesach. Rav Yosef says an area of 1 amma by 1 amma should be left bare, and says Rav Chizda it should be opposite the doorway. So we can't mourn too much forever. We obviously also can't ignore it, but everything that we do we should always be remembering the Churban. You build a new beautiful house, Mazel Tov, great. But just leave epis. Leave an amma by an amma opposite the doorway that is not finished, that is not beautiful, in order to remember the destruction of the Holy Temple. Also, Adam called Sarke Suda, a person, he makes a big Suda, Givaldig, Umashayid over Muat, but you should still leave over epis. Mai, what is this? Amr of Pope. Kasa da Arsen. Says Rav Pape, there was a great way to define this. Well, the article defined this in such a great way. I was just going to say fried fish, but you can have fried fish or you can have a pie of fish hash. A pie of fish hash. So make a gevaldige suda, but leave over a pie of fish hash. Also, Isha Kotach Shitel, a woman can do all of her jewelry. But leave over epis mai. What is that? Rav says Rav Bas Tzada. I don't know. I think maybe it's still in style. I don't know, but it at least was in style that they would remove the hair from their temples or something. Anyways, so whatever we do, right? Whether we're building a house. Leave a shtickle to remember Churban Abayis. You're making a big Suda, you're getting yourself dressed up all fancy. Always do epis to remember the Churban Abayis. So it's kind of this balancing act of, we have to go weiter, but also remember the Churban. I feel like, as Yidden, that's kind of, I feel like we've done that. Meaning, aside from the fact that people do that, you build a house, you leave, amma by amma, that's not unfinished, right? But I just feel like that's so much of just the Yidden in general. like, we don't forget the past, but we also move forward. We don't dwell on it, right? It's like these people, these Prussian, they were dwelling on it. They're like, how could we move forward? Rabbi Yeshua says, look people, you have to move forward, Sure, while you're moving forward, have these reminders along the way. We don't forget our past. We definitely don't forget our past. But we also big time move forward. Big time we move forward. But we also remember the past. Baruch Hashem, it's a zchus to be a yid. It's not the easy way to live life, but it's a good way. Alright, where are we? So the pasuk says, where am I? The pasuk says, that if I forget you, Jerusalem, forget my right hand, tidbak lashoni lechiki, imlo ezkirechi, right? Imlo ales Yushalayim rosh simchasi. V'gomer mai al rosh simchasi. And what does it mean, imlo ales Yushalayim rosh simchasi? That if I don't, bring Yerushalayim to my simchas, Rav Yitzchak says, Rav Yitzchak ze efer miklesh berosh chasanin. This is the ash that we put on the head of the chasin, under the chuppah, right? So again, you make a beautiful chasana, gewaldig, but there's a shtickle ash, right? We still remember a shtickle the Beis HaMikdash. Everything we do, we go weiter, we do everything big and gewaldig. But we always do something to remember the Beis HaMikdash as well. So that's the ash that you put on the forehead of the chasin. Omerle, Rav Papa Labai says, Rav Papa Labai, Heicha Monach La, where do you put the ash? B'makom tefillin. In the place where the tefillin goes. Shenema, as the pasuk says, la sum, probably. La sum la'avele tzion los islam peher tachas efer. That to those who mourn Zion to bring them peher, glory, in place of ash, and the glory is the tefillin, right? What is it? Pe'era chavush alecha or something. So that's the tefillin. So meaning b'makom efer, that where you have the efer for the chasin is also the place where the tefillin goes on the forehead. V'chol mis'abel al Yerushalayim, and whoever mourns for Jerusalem, like we just did, zoche v'roeh b'simcha, so will merit to see in its happiness, in its rejoicing. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, simchos Yerushalayim v'gomer, right? So as the pasuk say, simchos Yerushalayim v'gilu ba, kol oavea sisu ita masos, kol mis'ablim aleh, that right? Kol mis'abel Yerushalayim zoche v'roeh b'simcha. Tanya, we learn in the Brayso, Amr Bishmael ben Elisha says, Bishmael ben Elisha, Miyom Shachar Beis HaMikdash, from the day that the temple was destroyed, Din hu shenigzu al atzmenu shelo lecho basav l'lishtos yain. Yeah, technically speaking, it would make sense to say that we should no longer eat meat and we should no longer drink wine. But we don't make gezeras on the tzibor unless most of the tzibor would be able to stand by it. And once the evil empire, I believe of Rome, that they came and they said, "Shegozeres aleinu gezeres rose vikashos," and they decree upon us evil and difficult gezeres umevateles mimenu Torah mitzvahs, and they prevent us from studying the Holy Torah and from doing its commandments. And they don't allow us to do the mitzvah of bris milah, va'amida li Yeshua ben, or pidyon haben. Some say pidyon haben. Dinu shenigzor al atzmenu shlalisa isha olho lebanim v'nimtza zar shel Avram Avinu kol me'elav. So what we should do is, look, if we're not allowed to do these mitzvahs, so what are we going to do, right? We're going to have babies, and we're not going to do bris milah. So better, right? Dinu shenigzor al atzmenu. Really, we should make a gezerah. Shlalisa isha. We shouldn't get married. We shouldn't have children. V'nimtza zar shel Avram kol me'elav. And the children of Avram Avinu, they will just kind of die out, but we won't proactively be violating mitzvahs. Elo hanachloim liYisrael mutav shiushogin vayu mezidin. But look, you can't make a gzera that most people won't follow. You can't tell people not to get married, because then they're going to do it anyway. So rather, let them, don't make a gzera that they're then violating. Rather, hanachloim liYisrael mutav shiushogin value mezidin. Let them, have to figure it out as it goes, rather than, I guess, violating a gezer. Right, because if there's a gezer not to get married and they're violating the gezer, that's no good. So rather, I guess just, let the chips stand as they fall. And I guess it's good that we didn't die out, because we're still here. We're still going weiter. And we go weiter while still remembering what we need to remember. And here we are, 2,000 years later, still learning Cheskas Abatim like we have for the past 2,000 years. And we're still remembering these Gemaras about remembering the Beis HaMikdash. And we still have the, Amma by the Amma in our houses when we build them. And, we're it's a good thing that we didn't die out, because we're making the Eibishter proud, and we're still going weiter. And at Babylon Talmud, we're still keeping the Masorah strong, and we're still learning, and we're still enjoying it. Peace.